Okay, so welcome to episode 30 of the NOTCAST. Today is the 18th of December 2020. It's about 10 o'clock at night. About 10 o'clock on the last Friday before Christmas, I'm normally at Shepherd's Bush Empire seeing the wonder stuff with about 3 pints of cider in me, jumping up and down. That isn't an option, so today I'm talking about the original trilogy Star Wars movies. And because there's a lot to talk about, might be one episode per movie, might be 4 across all of them. I have no idea. I'm just going to make it up as I go along. One of the great things about this is that although it obviously looks like a tight and slickly rehearsed stadium show, this is just me talking in front of a camera with the cheat sheet over here and a whole bunch of stuff floating around in my brain. By the way, this is the soundtrack album for Star Wars before it was retitled The Last Hope. This is for the record collectors in you, this is the gold vinyl version, which was I think recently repressed. That's some kind of gold on there, and as far as I can tell, the only difference that it's got from the original double LP, which was one of the biggest selling classical LPs of the time, is the fact that it's got a barcode on the back, and the copyright information has changed to reflect the fact that it's all under a different company. Anyway, that's a Star Wars soundtrack album. By the way, this was heavily discounted from a major online retailer named after a river a very, very long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Whilst I'm also at it, I'm also going to show you that I've also, thanks to the miracles of patience and heavily discounted stock, picked up the gold vinyl version of The Empire Strikes Back, which is a double LP, and the Return of the Jedi soundtrack, which is also on gold vinyl, which is also a double LP. Now, this actually replicates the original 1983 and 1980 vinyl editions. Return of the Jedi was, for some reason, a single album. I felt a little cheated about that. There's a whole big world about soundtrack albums, which we can get into. Probably not today. I'm also going to point out I'm wearing one of my favourite ever t-shirts. So I'd like you to meet my good friend, Lego Darth Vader. Lego Darth Vader or Lego Star Wars t-shirts in adult sizes are very rare. Possibly rare as rocking horse shit. I haven't seen another one of these. Presumably this is for people that work in toy shops to try and make you buy Lego Star Wars stuff. Who knows? No idea. Hardly ever wear it because white t-shirts have a tendency to fall in battle after not long on the field. So today, talking about Star Wars, because I am a man with man-shaped genitals, and that is what men must do. Now, first and foremost, probably the first exposure most people had to Star Wars and to understand what's going on was this, which was the 1976 novelisation, allegedly written by George Lucas, but actually written by Alan Dean Foster. And by the way, Disney, if you're watching, pay Alan Dean Foster the money that you have contractually agreed. You're quite happy to keep his books in print. You should be happy then to pay the contractual agreements that have been made. You can't just pretend, oh, it's another company's bought it, so it doesn't count anymore. Pay the man, as Viz once had it. But Star Wars, you know, this novel, and by the way, this is a very brown novel now, was published about 6 months before the film came out. And so if you wanted to know what happened in the film, you had to go and read the book. Books, they're great. So this was first published in Great Britain by Spear Books, 1977, although copyright 1976 by the Star Wars Corporation. And the first words are another galaxy, another time. The old republic was the republic of legend, greater than distance or time. No need to note where it was or whence it came, only to know that it was the republic. Strange, really, is that, you know, the first version. Oh, by the way, back page, an advert for Illuminatus, which is a bit bizarre. So, have you ever wondered who is the man in Zurich that some swear is Lee Harvey Oswald? If there's an esoteric allegory concealed in the apparently innocent legend of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and why scholarly anthropologists turn pale at the very mention of the forbidden name Yog Sothoth. Illuminatus comes in 3 parts because everything good comes in a trilogy. 1, the Eye of the Pyramid. 2, the Golden Apple. 3, Leviathan. Absolutely no idea if anyone ever bought it. What I do know is that this cost you a grand total of 95p in 1976. And because I am the kind of person that had film novelisations, I also have the novelisation of The Empire Strikes Back, written by Donald F. Glutt. Again, these came with some photographs inside them and were based on shooting scripts. And Return of the Jedi, which was written by James Caan and is considerably thinner, coming at a grand total of 181 pages, slightly wider text. And oh look, there's a picture of a robot and a man in a teddy bear outfit. Anyway, so in 1976, you were able to construct a version of Star Wars that existed in your head by listening to the soundtrack album, reading the book, or the comic book versions, and possibly also maybe buying some 16mm film. Now, the versions of the films I'm talking about today, original theatrical editions, as has been previously mentioned, only on the 2006 bonus disc DVDs of the Holy Trilogy, as it is called. Non-anamorphic, based on I think the 1993 Laserdisc versions. And for some reason, I have an unofficial Star Wars DVD viewing companion written by Empire magazine, including the still highly good value for money Chris Hewitt, who I've spent hundreds of hours listening to whilst walking around and about. I mean, really? Is it though? Really? Yes. And if we were going to get his name correct, we better call him by his name, although he is funnier than I am, hence why he's got a podcast, or more correctly, works at Empire on their podcast. I am just a man in front of a phone. So, talking about Star Wars, first and foremost, where we absolutely, positively must start is with this. So this is perhaps something which you may or may not know about. It's the 2014 graphic novel based upon George Lucas's very first draft of Star Wars, called The Star Wars. And it's reading this, you can see where all the ideas for the 6 Star Wars films that came out under George Lucas's tutelage occurred. There are scenes where Jar Jar Binks turns up. He's got a slightly different name. One of the Anakin's Starkiller and Darth Vader are 2 completely separate people. Obi-Wan Kenobi is not in it. Luke Skywalker is a kid who's the son of Anakin Starkiller. Lots of characters look oddly like other people. Han Solo is a green 9-foot guild space renegade. Darth Vader hardly ever wears a helmet and looks oddly enough like a character in The Mandalorian. It's kind of like reading a Jive-Bunny-Mash-Up of all 6 movies, which someone had written down in a fever whilst they were perhaps recovering from an LSD trip. There's, I think, the main protagonist that we've got in the series looks oddly like George Lucas. As the cliche goes, all art is autobiography. The question is never whose autobiography. And we've got, for example, Mos Eisley is called Gordon. I'm not sure Gordon knows that. Some of the other characters look extremely very familiar indeed. It uses, for example, early concept art for things like X-Wings, Y-Wings. It reads more like a whacked out version of Dune that's having a quite bonkers trip. Probably soundtracked by the Alan Parsons Project, by the way. There are random and weird plot elements that turn up. So, for example, the 2 droids that we've got, C-3PO and R2-D2, are pretty much the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the Star Wars world. Sorry, Trekkers. Kind of pop up from time to time. Then all of a sudden, you've got, laser swords, you've got space fights, you've got weird versions of original things. You've got things that you later turn up only. So, for example, this, which only turns up in the prequel trilogy, suddenly appears inside the guts of the main set. And you've got all manner of weird and unusual things going on in here. You've got, Prince Valorum turns up. He's a baddie, although obviously in the film he's a goodie. R2-D2 is basically a sarcastic bastard. The whole thing, it's absolutely fascinating to read this and to see just how awful Star Wars would have been if it had been manufactured in its original first draft. It was kind of like a trippy version of Dune crossed with heavy metal. By the way, this dude here, that's Han Solo, and yes, he's got a red lightsaber. All a bit weird. My recommendation is I think the films as came out are considerably better than these. So there you go. And for example, that's an appearance by a character that speaks oddly like Jar Jar, carrying the prone and unconscious body of Leia, who is being smuggled around on a jungle planet. It's all a bit strange, and then all of a sudden, howdy stranger, I'm Owen Lars. Gee, look at my beard. Obviously, I take beard tips off characters in Star Wars, and it all turns into a bit Return of the Jedi, and then all of a sudden there's the fan. It's really, really strange and eye-opening to hear and to read the first draft of The Phantom Menace and the Star Wars movies, or more correctly, to read the first draft of Star Wars, and then to see where all the bits from The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, bits from the Clone Wars. There's even a couple of scenes which actually appear in The Force Awakens, which are in this really, really fascinating thing to read. But of course, that's not the version that we saw in 1977. The version that we saw in 1977 comes in a multitude of forms. I'm going to talk through actually. This, for example, was the first Star Wars annual number 1 from 1977. This was published by Brown and Watson. Just dig the retro typography and fonts on that. But this is held together by sticky tape. It was, I think I bought this for £1.75 on the 18th of April 2013 from a charity shop. But there, for example, you've got the black and white version of the Star Wars opening page, and then you've got some colour pages as well, clearly to save themselves a few pence. There's some really fantastic little graphics in there. These are brilliant little books, and clearly run out of colour. Now, as we all know, parts of the 70s were in black and white, and so let's not be too surprised around that. So yeah, there you go. That's a Star Wars annual. I probably had a copy of this, and as is the case with lots of things, when I was younger, I either got bored, lost them, something happened to them, or some wanker of a kid stole them off me. Now, in 1997, Star Wars got a second graphic novel adaptation on the base of the special edition, and you can see right from the off, as opposed to it being a graphic representation of what they think the start of the movie is going to look like, because they haven't seen the movie, they've only seen the graphic art. That is coming straight out of the screen, coming right at you. Uara Kadabra gonna reach out and grab you, as a song once goes. And as you can see, it really does follow the plot of the movie very slavishly. So this one was £10.99, but for me it was probably about 50p, again from a boot fair or a charity shop. I love walking around charity shops and boot fairs, primarily because you get to see things from history that you may never ever get a chance to see again, things that you didn't even necessarily know existed, and they're affordable. It feels like I'm making charitable donations at the same time. And people try and give me receipts when I buy things in charity shops. I'm like, why are you going to give me a receipt? I'm not going to take it back. I've made a charitable donation in return for some random stuff that I want. So that was how we kind of experienced Star Wars. Whilst we're on it, of course, I've got the annuals for The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, the 1984 Return of the Jedi annual, which has a completely non-canon set of stories, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and the Star Wars Return of the Jedi pop-up book, because I'm in touch with my inner child. This is a very strange look. It's Luke's fallen down a hole, and there it is. Who is it? Someone who loves you. This, I couldn't believe it when I saw this. I'm like, I'm going to buy this. This is going to be brilliant. There's the Sarlacc pit. Look at that. Jabba's palace. Sorry, I'm like an inner child, going straight away to the Ewoks. They've picked out some really strange bits to turn into sections for this. If you're trying to work out what happens in this film, then you haven't got a bloody clue, have you? This is probably the most difficult page here, because there's two very small bits of paper that jam together. And then, the rebels blow up the Death Star. Woohoo! And there you go. So that was quite exciting. Boo-hoo, let's blow this one, kid. And then everyone hangs out at home. This version of Return of the Jedi doesn't have Lando in. Come on, guys, what are you talking about? So, Talking about Star Wars then, as you can see, I hadn't really worked out a full and detailed plan around this. So the first episode, I think, is I'm going to be talking about the Star Wars film itself. So the Star Wars film came out in 1977, May the 4th, and I think looking at it now through the prism of time, it's obviously a technological masterpiece for 1977. If you'd only seen Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, I think you'd be very, very disappointed by that Star Wars movie. First and foremost, and correct me if I'm wrong because that's what the internet is for, if the Emperor is mentioned, it's only fleeting and briefly. The Imperial March is never heard in the Star Wars movie. Yoda's never mentioned. And a cool ass picture of Darth Vader on the back there. But also, it's clearly an embryonic movie with a very unusual view of the world. Now, if you'd seen Revenge of the Sith, if you'd seen Phantom Menace, if you'd seen Attack of the Clones, you're going to be watching Star Wars and going, this isn't that good. You know, the pace is by today's standards quite slow, although by 1977 standards it's super mega fast. By the way, I'd like to point out, if you watch films from the 70s, they seem slower because they are. It was more about creating an atmosphere than characters being plot ciphers that existed to push the plot forward towards you in the realms of stuff that's going to happen. So I watched a film called The Long Goodbye, which I think stars Elliot Gould, that was made in about 1975. The first 10 minutes of it are about a man trying to buy dog food late at night in LA. It doesn't do anything to advance the plot. It's just a nice little character piece that sets up who our character is and that he really cares about making sure his dog's got some food. But that's not really important right now. But what it does show is that movies moved at a different speed in 1977. So if you watch Star Wars straight off the back of the Revenge of the Sith, you're going to go, okay, so there's Darth Vader. He's clearly the walking embodiment of evil. He hates the Jedi to bits because the last time he saw Obi-Wan Kenobi had cut off his arms and his legs and said, I've got the high ground, and then walked off, leaving him to die in a pit of fire. And while some people might form new metal bands, other people put on ventilators and masks and go around killing anybody that they can think of instead of getting a therapist. I do think that the Empire would have been a far healthier working environment if Darth Vader had gone for some counselling. And I also think that actually it's going to be really, really dangerous to have a career path working in the Empire, because primarily Darth Vader will kill whoever's standing nearest to him when something goes wrong, and then he'll promote the guy that's standing nearest to him. So really, it's only going to be a matter of time before the ship's cook is in charge of... Oh, that's a sneeze. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, it's only... Sorry, I completely sneezed at the point where I was going to the punchline of my joke. So, let's start again. Which is that it would only be a matter of time before the ship's cook is actually in charge of the Star Destroyer, on the grounds that all you have to do is stand near someone to be promoted. Now, maybe in the current government, that's how they do things in the current government. A lot of people who are in our current government were children in the 70s. They probably learned their management style from Star Wars. They thought that was acceptable workplace behaviour, and you promote the guy that's standing next to you when the other one screws up. It's a little bit strange. Certainly no one's ever sat down with Darth Vader and went, look, Darth, we think this looks really bad from a PR perspective. You need to resign. Because Darth will end up just going, force choking them to death, throwing them against the wall, and then going, apology accepted, Michael Gove, and then goes, Admiral Hunt, you are now in charge of the NHS, and he'll just sit there and go, ha ha, my evil plan. Anyway, first and foremost, I'm just anecdoting about anything I can really think of. Star Wars is a kids' movie. Make no bones about it. It's not designed for people of my age. It's designed for people that are 10th of my age. And if you were watching it in 1977, and you were 4 years old, as I was just sat there just like going, oh my God. And in fact, if you want to hear some really interesting footage from the time, you can go and find an audience recording from inside the theatre of a screening of The Empire Strikes Back, and you can hear how the audience reacts with whoops and cheers and claps and hollers and hools when certain bits happen in certain movies. And it's only been relatively recently, in the past 30 years or so, that applause and clapping and things like that have gone away in movies. There was a Star Wars movie I saw that had a fantastic audience reaction, but I'm not talking about that one just yet. Also, in terms of maybe an audience reaction, which is the most obviously memorable audience reaction I've heard, is that there's a film called Hereditary, and there's a scene where a character makes a noise, but that character had been killed in a previous scene, and I was at the top. I like to sit at the back, at the centre cinema, to get the biggest view and to get the best sound kind of stage. That's where I like to be. I don't want to be front and centre. I want to be front. I want to be centre and at the back when I go and see a movie in the cinema. I was at the back and I could see a man who is way over there, right down at the front on the left. And he literally, you could see him jump out of his screen, and then he shouted at the top of his voice the F word. It was really exciting to see people still viscerally, emotionally, instinctually reacting to something that's happening in a movie. I thought that stuff had gone because we're all just sat there just watching things on screens, and we're used to watching films on iPhones and iPads and all that type of stuff in the back of cars. So the idea of having a collective cinematic experience where 200 people or so sit in a cinema and experience a film together for the first time without spoilers, without knowing what's going on, is really almost gone away now. And I remember when in Empire Strikes Back, and this question was asked by Mark Peterborough on Twitter. Hi, Mark. How did the audience respond in The Empire Strikes Back? And the answer was, I think some people kind of knew that Darth was Luke's father, because Dave Prowse had given an interview to a local newspaper, and the word had spread. But if you listen to the audience recording of a screening of Empire Strikes Back, and he goes, "No, Luke, I am your father," and it's deathly quiet. There's none of that. Everyone's just like, because they're so in the moment. The rest of the universe has gone away, and that really is an example of just how great good cinema is. So I'm kind of rambling, because Rambler's going to ramble. But talking about Star Wars, which I probably should, it is a kids' movie. It's designed for kids. It's designed to be watched by kids. The age that it's probably targeted at. If you think about the protagonist, as I said, the Phantom Menace is aimed at 8-year-olds, 8 to 13-year-olds. Attack of the Clones is probably aimed at 14 to 18-year-olds, and Revenge of the Sith is built from a mentality of being around 22, 23. Star Wars is probably best experienced as an 18 or 19-year-old if you're not a kid. You sat there and you're watching it. Now, if it's the first film that you've seen, actually one of my first memories is relating to Star Wars, is that in the summer of 1977, my grandma knocked on the door and she came and brought a T-shirt in, a Star Wars T-shirt, which she picked up at the local market, probably a bootleg T-shirt, with the aim of so we could wear it, so I could wear it. And that's one of my first memories, probably in the top first 3 of my memories, was that as a golden summer's day in 1977. And I remember the T-shirt. I certainly don't fit into it now. But that's how Star Wars became part of our childhoods. But watching Star Wars now, if you'd seen Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, and Revenge of the Sith, and then you were watching Star Wars A New Hope, you sat there and go, this is really slow. Not very much is happening. I recognise that guy, that's Darth Vader, and I recognise C-3PO and R2-D2. R2-D2 hasn't had his memory wiped, but C-3PO did have his memory wiped. And it's some years after Darth Vader, still very, very annoyed indeed. And okay, and then all of a sudden Luke turns up, and who's this whining, gawky, geeky kid? And he probably gets bullied by his mates, and when he's not there, they probably call him Luke the Loser or something. I don't know. It's a really strange bunch of extra characters to bring in. And if Star Wars had come out in, let's say, 2009 as a sequel to Revenge of the Sith, it would be panned. It would be totally rubbish, because everyone would go, look at these new characters, nobody likes them. Luke's a dork, Leia's a bit of a stuck-up princess type, Han Solo's the only one that anyone likes. But again, what's that weird space guy doing? And then you've got Chewbacca, bringing in Chewbacca from Revenge of the Sith. That's obvious fan service there. No one's mentioning Yoda. Emperor hardly gets mentioned. Has someone forgotten the Imperial March? So it would be, Star Wars looks like a worse film if you come at it as a sequel to Revenge of the Sith. It's a really good film but also it gets to the point where they've forgotten what they're going to do. Halfway through, Obi-Wan Kenobi dies because there's nothing else for his character to do apart from sit around and be Vlad the Explainer and say, oh, do that, do this, do that, do the other. And it's it was quite a bold move, I think, to kill Alec Guinness halfway through the movie. But also it was necessary because his character didn't do anything about stand around pointing at things and telling people what to do afterwards. So we know Star Wars, no point me telling you what happens in the film or anything like that. What's really interesting is when you watch it, is that as a movie, Star Wars was very, very clearly saved in the editing room. And the reason it was saved in the editing room, now, if you look at all the bits where Basil Exposition turns up and tells you what's going on, when Luke is in his land speeder, when they're talking about the Death Star bearing down on the rebel base at Yavin, it's all cutaways, it's all side shots. You can't see people's mouths moving. It's all been fixed with post dialogue and ADR and things like that. So all the shots where it goes, well, the Death Star is 30 seconds from the rebel base. You don't see anyone going. No, it's all off screen mechanical voices whilst you watch maps and stuff happening. So once you watch Star Wars, you can see it's all been fixed and saved in the edits, because I think the version of the film that was made was probably inferior to the version of the film that we see now. Films are written 3 times. The first one is the script of the movie. The second one is when it's shot. Now the third one, and the most important way in which it's written, is the final edit. So if you're a writer, you write lots and lots of stuff, and then the cliche is you kill your babies. So you take out stuff that doesn't work in the context of the film, and you have to leave it on the cutting room floor. But with Star Wars, they added stuff in, so they put extra shots, inserts, all those type of things, and then covered it with Basil Exposition talking about what's happening. So the Death Star is 30 seconds away from Yavin. Now, if you hadn't had any of that subplot, hey guys, here we are. We're the rebels. We're just going to go up and blow up an enemy base. And, by the way, that base is doing nothing. It's just standing in space. We're going to go and do it. We're the space terrorists, and we're going to go and blow up, the big fancy ship, the flagship. So basically, the Death Star attack is kind of like the 9/11 of the Star Wars world. Now, that sounds very disrespectful. It isn't. But 9/11 obviously completely turned the world upside down. It was a world-changing event, and it was a very, very major event where terrorists attacked a very major and obvious thing. Now, it would have been very similar to, let's say, if a terrorist group had blown up a nuclear submarine or had, for example, flown a plane into the Pentagon. It's that kind of level of thing that's happening. So it's catastrophic in terms of how it changes the world. And what you can see in The Empire Strikes Back, by the way, is the Empire is responding to this, and it's going, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Not that we were nice guys to start with, but no more Mr. Nice Guy at all. We are going to really oppress you. And if you think that the terms of the deal are unfair, it would be unfortunate if I had to leave a garrison here. It really would. And that deal is getting worse all the time. So with Star Wars, what you've got is a really interesting film, but it's clearly actually a pretty inferior, pretty controversial sequel to Revenge of the Sith. It throws in new characters. It's got comic relief, which maybe you wouldn't necessarily have seen since The Phantom Menace. It's got these 3 new people, Luke and Leia and Han Solo are in there. Obi-Wan Kenobi's an old dude played by a different actor who gets killed halfway through. Darth Vader still got anger issues about everything. You've got all these weird, you've got Peter Cushing in slippers, called Grand Moff Tarkin. I don't even know what a Grand Moff is, but presumably it's the same guy that was at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and it's taken them 20 years to make the Death Star, and there must be supply problems and things like that. Obviously, it does no favours for the Empire, because everyone thinks the Empire can't manage their way out of a paper bag. They're awful at running contracts. They can't even get a Death Star built after 20 million. It's kind of like some failing system that is always delivered over time, over budget, and over here. It's taken them 20 years to build a bloody Death Star. It's crazy. And who are these new characters? Why does Obi-Wan die half the way through? He could manage to kill Darth Vader the last time, and this time he just goes, I'm going to put his... I'm bored fighting, Darth. I'm just going to put my... And then you kill me. And it's like, well, that's maybe not the Obi-Wan Kenobi that we were used to. Or maybe he just got tired of playing intergalactic hide and seek with Darth Vader. There's no Yoda, there's no Emperor. You always get the impression, actually, in Star Wars that you're coming into a scene just after the Emperor's walked out, and it's like, oh, I've just had a briefing from the Emperor, and it's like, could you not afford an actor for the Emperor? Or maybe another way of looking at it is that George was making this up as he was going along, and he the fact that Star Wars is a coherent movie is practically a miracle of editing, considering the budget and the restrictions that were placed upon it. Also, by the way, when you watch Star Wars on the new Blu Ray, the 2819 Blu Ray, it's much more obvious that somebody inside the Darth suit. You can see through Darth's red visors, you can see his eyes, you can see there's a human in there, which I couldn't really do on VHS. And when you saw the film in the cinema, it was moving so fast you couldn't really see it. So now you can see Darth as a human in there, and you go. So the mystery that there used to be, which is you had no idea who the guy was who was inside Darth's helmet. You watch the Blu-ray now, you can see his eyes darting around, especially the shot where the TIE fighter at the end gets shot by the Millennium Falcon. Goes, what? And you can really see his eyes going there. And you go, oh, so Darth's just a dude in a scary helmet, which perhaps kind of really spoils the movie a little bit, because if you hadn't seen the prequels in the first film, Darth Vader's just this guy dressed in black with a weird helmet, and he hates everyone and everything, and you have no idea if it's an eight-eyed tentacle monster inside there, or as it actually is, just a guy with some really bad burns, and is perhaps not quite so scary. Especially when you saw him 3 films before go, yippee! But Star Wars was fixed in the edit. It makes a lot more sense if you watch the movie and then you think about actually switching the sound off at certain points and go, well, actually, there's no conflict at the end. The Death Star isn't chasing Yavin. They fixed it all later on. So a lot of the exposition, a lot of the explanatory text happens where you can't really see people's mouths moving. And obviously, having Darth Vader being overdubbed by James Earl Jones makes it a heck of a lot easier to add extra dialogue in, which wasn't originally shot on the floor on the day. And if you watch, you can watch the original footage of Dave Prowse, God rest his soul, going in a Norfolk accent or a Bristol accent around tear the ship apart. I need to find some tractors. It's not quite so scary. It really isn't. James Earl Jones really nailed the voice around that. But the whole film was saved in rewrites. It was saved in the edit. It was saved in everything that happened after the film was made, because I think the first edit of it was probably really rough and really ropey. I'm so familiar with Star Wars. I must have seen it at least once a year since I was 4, which means I've seen it at least 10 times. Now, I should point out, I was not born on the 29th of February, because if I was born on the 29th of February, I'd be 11 years old. But if I was born not on the 29th of February, that means I've now seen the film at least 40 times. I've probably seen it 100 times. And in the summer holidays when I was younger and all you really had was VHS tapes of the films that you'd recorded off television, is that, I was watching Star Wars as a trilogy probably on a weekly basis as a 12 or 13-year-old. When Return of the Jedi was first on the TV in around about 1986, because there was a window between when the films were shown at the cinema and when they were first shown on television that used to have to be, by law, 3 years to allow for cinema re-releases and VHS sales. And so 1986, the golden summer of 1986, primarily because Return of the Jedi was on television for the first time, I then got to the point where I was watching those films many times every summer. Which means I've probably seen Star Wars more times than I've seen. I've definitely seen Star Wars more times than I've seen some of my favourite bands. I know that's an absolute standard fact. But there you are. So I'm going to kind of wrap up here, I think, about Star Wars. I'm going to talk about Empire Strikes Back and some of the questions which have been sent on Twitter in the next episode. All the questions seem to relate to Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But I'll draw it to a close here, and I'll talk about Empire Strikes Back at another point. In the meantime, thank you very much for your interest. Here's a book I didn't get around to showing you, but I will do at some point whilst I talk about Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Thank you, and see you again soon. Bye.